We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Friday. It's going to be a busy Friday. Now, it's just me alone today. No guests, no lives, nothing like that. And this is a good time to catch up on the emails because we have a number of emails to read. Always look forward to that. We're going to talk about a couple of stories before we get started because a lot of shit happened yesterday. And we just want to update you. And because of what happened yesterday, things are going to be interesting today. I wanted to make a couple of points about some social media stuff. There's something that came out about TikTok. The people from TikTok said the Supreme Court needs to overturn this, or they're just going to shut everything off on January 19th, which is different than what we thought they might do. We thought it'd be outlawed in this country, and they just take them out of um, the Android and the Apple stores, and we'd still have some time. Well, TikTok is taking that away. They're saying, nope, we're just going to shut it down. And part of that is posturing. You know, there's some people on Donald Trump's side that want to try to find a way to buy it, and they're applying some pressure. And TikTok's just not going to sell. They're just not going to do it. So they're willing to just shut it down. And, you know, the thing about it is it's going to cost them a lot of money, but it's going to cost a lot of people in this country a lot of money too, namely one of Donald Trump's best buddies, who's a big time investor into TikTok. So I think what TikTok is doing is they're calling their bluff. It's a dangerous game for both sides because as much as the Republicans want to shut this down, they're a little leery of it now because of the amount of money that will be left on the table. I will tell you this, if they do shut down TikTok, I'll survive one way or another. I'll be on YouTube, I'll be on Blue Sky, and of course on Spotify with the audio version of this podcast. Um, TikTok being up or down or whatever it is isn't going to have any impact on the Rational Boomer podcast. I will always do this. Fact of the matter is the only reason I did TikTok is to gain enough followers to justify doing a podcast. Well, here I am doing a podcast every day. So if TikTok goes away, it'll be a sad day. There are a lot of people out there that I feel obligated to. But if they shut it down, there's not much I can do about it. So I can only hope those folks will follow us over here at YouTube because all the things you see on TikTok are on YouTube or Blue Sky. So there are some options out there. I'm still not convinced that they're going to shut it down because, you know, it's a threat either by TikTok or by our politicians, but they're posturing here. I really get that sense. And the last thing either one of them wants to do is blow their load. Because if you shut it down, even for a week or so, that sends ripples through the whole social media platform. And people will say, fuck it, I'll go someplace else. I'm not going to stick around where it's unstable. Then all of a sudden you have an app that's not as valuable as it was a few days before. It's too volatile for them to just shut it down. I'm not saying they're not going to shut it down. I mean, whether we're talking about politicians or big business, we've seen them do a ton of stupid shit. So it's conceivable that it could happen. But the fact of the matter is we're still going to be here. We're still going to do all the same things that we do with the podcast and the shorter version videos that you can also get on Blue Sky and on YouTube. So don't worry about that. If you're hearing this, you know where you can get me other than TikTok. It's the people on TikTok I'll have to remind to come over this way. You know, it is what it is. Whatever happens, happens, and we just got to find our way around it. Step back, take a look, and say, okay, this is fucked, but we still have this, so let's just do that. I'm not going to fret over this. You know, everything changes over time. And if this is what they want to do, if they want to step on their own dicks, well, that's up to them. Anyhow, it's absolutely a ridiculous ploy by both sides, and I don't honestly know how it's going to work out. Now, we also know that Facebook has come out and said that they're going to take all fact checking off of Facebook. Well, there's a good idea. It's ironic that they would take all the fact checking off after they banned my account. But here's the deal. When I got banned on Facebook, I wasn't too upset about it. I'm also banned on Instagram too because Facebook and Instagram are tied. I don't really care. I don't really care. I had followers there, and I'm sorry that I can't appeal to them or can't service their needs anymore, but that wasn't my call. That's Facebook for whatever fucked up reason. And frankly, with Mark Zuckerberg and the way Facebook has been, I don't know even know that I want to be part of that. It just doesn't interest me anymore. Um, People say to me, well, TikTok, you got a big audience. What happens if you lose that big audience? Listen, man, whether my audience is 400,000 or 4,000, I don't care. If there's an audience to serve, I'll be here to do it. It doesn't really matter. All right, we had some interesting stories yesterday that we want to talk about. Um, we had the Supreme Court step in. Now, see, Donald Trump didn't have a good day yesterday. Things were going badly. And this is what I think you can expect for Donald Trump. Donald Trump had a big night on November 5th. He won. But be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. Donald Trump will be a lame duck president. He will now be a liability for Republicans. Once he's gotten what he wants, he's going to be surprised by how other people respond to him anymore. He's blown his wad. There's nothing more he can do for these people. They accomplished what they wanted. They got him elected. And the Supreme Court is a good example of this. Donald Trump was terrified of being sentenced in the Manhattan District hush money case. And I'm not sure why this has been a big deal to him other than his own emotional state. I mean, Republicans and Donald Trump seem to think that he's not really convicted until he gets sentenced. And that's not really true. He is a convicted felon right now with the sentencing or not. But he was fighting like hell to not be sentenced. He went to Judge Juan Marchand and said, hey, I'm the president now. I've got immunity. So you can just forget about this, right? Judge Juan Marchand said, fuck yourself. And then he went to the New York Appellate Court, the highest court in the state of New York. I know you're saying they have a Supreme Court in the state of New York. They do, but it's not as high as the appellate court. I don't know why. Anyway, he went to the appellate court and said, yeah, he should be delayed to sentence me because I'm going to be president. And the appellate court said, fuck that. Now, while he was waiting for the appellate court's decision, he also appealed to the Supreme Court. He thought certainly they would save him. And here's the thing that's weird about that. The Manhattan District and the convictions there are in state court. So the Supreme Court really has no authority over a state court. They have no jurisdiction there. But they took it on. And guess what? They told Donald Trump, you have to be sentenced. Even his own Supreme Court didn't stand behind him. And I think this may be part and parcel to what I was talking about earlier. The Supreme Court is bent to Donald Trump, and now that he's going to be president, they're seeing what kinds of things he's going to do. And I think the Supreme Court and John Roberts, the Chief Justice, kind of had to show Donald Trump, you're not a dictator, motherfucker. You're not the strongest one here. You're not the boss. I'm the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We're going to do it my way. So the Supreme Court on Thursday night denied an emergency petition from lawyers for President-elect Donald Trump to block Friday's scheduled criminal sentencing in New York. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen today. As you're listening to this, it may be coming up shortly, or it may be already done, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all goes down. 5 justices voted to deny Trump's petition. The 4 who have granted it were Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. Oh, big fucking surprise. The people that get the free trips and all the bribe money, they're the ones that voted for Donald Trump. And I would love to hear how they could justify that because, as I've said, Supreme Court has no authority over state courts. Anyway, the big split here was broken by Chief Justice John Roberts. Was he trying to redeem himself? Is he trying to show Donald Trump who's boss? I don't know. I don't really care. Donald Trump is going to be sentenced. Now, in May, Trump was found guilty, 34 felony counts on falsifying records to cover up hush money payments he made to conceal extramarital affairs before the 2016 election. Now, the decision is largely, I don't know, moot. Judge Juan Marchand is expected to give Trump an unconditional discharge, meaning the president elect will not be given jail time, a fine, or probation. Marchand had postponed sentencing in September till after the election to dispel any suggestions that the courts will have issued any decision or imposed sentence either to give an advantage or to create a disadvantage for any political party or candidate for office. Excuse me. And it goes back to, what we were dealing with Merrick Garland. Oh, we don't want to look too fucking political. So they put things off. Now, a lot of people are upset about the fact that essentially, from what we understand, Judge Juan Marchand isn't going to do anything in terms of punishment. And we don't know that for sure because he could do some things. It's really hard to tell exactly what's going to happen. But more importantly, the punishment is secondary to the actual sentencing, because this is the thing that nails it down for Donald Trump. He's always able to talk in gray areas. Well, no, I was exonerated for this, or this didn't really happen because they didn't do this. Well, in this case with the Manhattan District, they did everything. They indicted him, they prosecuted him, they convicted him, and now they sentenced him. That's a done deal. He cannot deny that. And that is fucking with Donald Trump's head. I'm telling you, this guy's a narcissist. You send him to jail, that's one thing. But if you prove that he's wrong, that's a big fucking problem. And that's going to get in his head and fuck with him a lot. And it's a small consolation, but I'll take anything at this point, seeing Donald Trump get away with so many things. If we can get in his head, fuck with his head, give somebody an argument to say, Donnie, you fucked up, you're a convicted felon. You can't say, well, I didn't get sentenced, so I'm not a convicted felon, which is a flat out lie, but that's what he would have done. Now he can't even say that. He can say it was a hoax. He can say it was unjust, but it went through trial. He was judged by a jury of his peers, and it's a done deal. Convicted, sentenced, 34 felony charges. There's no two ways about it. And trust me, this is going to piss off Donald Trump. We're going to see him saying some crazy shit. It's going to be interesting. Now, this was also a bad day for Donald Trump in court in another situation. A federal appeals court has cleared the way for the public release of special counsel Jack Smith's report on the 2020 election interference case against Donald Trump over the objections of the president-elect. Yeah, he tried to get out of that report being released, and he made appeals. And once again, like he always does, he lost that fucking appeal. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on Thursday turned down a challenge from Trump and his co-defendants in his classified documents case who are seeking to block the release of the report. And it's not surprising that he would want to block that report because there's a lot of testimony in here. And not testimony from Democrats. These are testimony from people that were in his inner circle, people that were on his staff, people that were in his cabinet. They're all speaking up and testifying against Donald Trump. And once again, it's going to be hard for him to deny this when all his own people are explaining how he's a big piece of shit. Now, the report will not immediately be released. A lower court ruling from Trump-appointed U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon temporarily blocking the release of the report remains in place for 3 days. That's what the 11th Circuit did. And there could be more appeals on this. I guess you can almost count on it. The Justice Department said Wednesday that it plans to release the volume detailing Smith's finding on Trump's efforts to undo his 2020 election loss, but will keep under wraps for now the section on Trump's classified documents case while legal proceedings against his co-defendants are ongoing. So they're talking about releasing the report regarding the insurrection on January 6, 2021, the holding back on the classified documents. A lot of people are asking, why would they do that? Well, I don't know that they really even have to, but there are a couple of Donald Trump's dupes, Walt Nada and De Oliveira. They're still being prosecuted. While Donald Trump has been put on hold or dismissed from his case, those two are still going to court. And the argument is if you release these reports, it might hinder these two trials for these two men. And I don't know that's a really legitimate complaint or not, but they're kind of giving it to them. And I'm not so worried about that. Hopefully, at some point down the road, they'll be released. But of course, Merrick Garland won't be in the DOJ by that time. It'll be somebody that Donald Trump picked out. So we may never see that. But as long as the insurrection information is out, that's going to be pretty damning. That's going to be hard for Donald Trump to dispute. So that's good news. Donald Trump had a very bad day in court yesterday. And this is what I'm saying. Donald Trump's been riding a high because he won on November 5th. But now that he's won, a lot of things are going to happen. He's going to have to produce. All his promises are going to have to be kept. But we know Donald Trump's not going to keep his promises. That's just not going to fucking happen. And so he's going to have a lot of losing in front of him. And this is going to be tough for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is most concerned about his image, the perception people have of him, and none of it's going to be good. The Republicans, as I said, are going to find him a liability. They're going to push back on him. Donald Trump is a lame duck president, but he's going to be a really weak president because nobody's going to want to step on that fucking boat when they know it's going to be sinking. So I think Donald Trump is in for a tough couple of years if he even lasts that long. And I don't know that he will, either by his physical health or by way of the Republicans getting tired of the bullshit and somehow bum rushing him the fuck out of office. Now, the other story that's obviously making huge news are the fires in Los Angeles. And as you watch that on television, it's absolutely devastating. I have some friends that live in Los Angeles. One friend, her son may or may have already lost his house. Another gentleman I know seemed to be in a safe position, but he explained emotionally it's tough because it's just a shift of a wind and an ember coming into your area, and then all bets are off. So he's there. He's safe at this point, but he's nervous. I have some friends that have a nephew there, and they've been evacuated. Unfortunately, they found a place to stay in Anaheim. And Abe, Abe. Abe's been on the show before. He's on TikTok, goes by the name Won't Be Silent. Great guy. Love Abe. I reached out to him. He lives in Beverly Hills. And at last report, he seemed to be safe and in a good position. But he's extremely upset because a lot of his friends live in those areas where they've lost their homes. There's got to be very trying times for people in Los Angeles. I was just out there a couple of months ago. And I like Los Angeles. I don't know that I could ever live there, but it is a cool place. And it's so sad to see this. And then when we see this shit, and Joe Biden's doing what he can, other politicians are doing what they can, and Donald Trump just comes out ranting and raving and trying to blame it on Biden and Gavin Newsom and all that. It's just, what a fucking child. Let's worry about the people that are in trouble. Let's not continue to spew this ridiculous rhetoric with your anger and your violent nature. Wait till something tragic happens to you, Donald. You're going to see about half this country cheering that fucking thing. So I can't wait for that. Anyway, firefighters are battling to control a series of fires in Los Angeles area that have killed 7 people, ravaged communities from the Pacific Coast to Pasadena, and have forced 180,000 people to flee their homes. Wind conditions. Now, this report just came out a short time before doing the podcast, but this is last night. Wind conditions, ferocious, blazing, fanning winds have calmed somewhat today, but the National Weather Service warned that the wind is expected to strengthen this evening. The fire map, the Palisades fire near the coast was burned about 26.9 square miles. The Eaton fire north of Pasadena has burned about 21.4 square miles. The Kenneth fire in the San Fernando Valley has burned 1.5 square miles. Now, I also understand that it was going into Highland Hills and in Calabasas too. It's hard to keep track of this. I do what I can. I worry about the friends that I have out there and all the people out there for that matter. It's got to be an absolutely terrifying situation. So, those are some of the news stories that we had yesterday, and there's going to be a lot more today, and you'll be able to hear them on TikTok and YouTube and Blue Sky. We'll keep you posted. In fact, I think the podcast tomorrow will be a live that I'll do on TikTok, and we'll talk about some of the things that happened. We'll talk about the reactions to Donald Trump being sentenced. Now, we do have a lot of emails, so I'm going to get to them. First one comes from Colin. I think he's from the UK. He says, I know you don't have any interest in UK politics, but we have a right-wing party called Reform, led by Nigel Farage, totally in bed with Trump and Musk. Musk has today pulled the carpet from Farage. It's wonderful to behold. Google it. It's so funny. Colin. Yeah, that's the one thing, and it's not that I don't have any interest in UK politics. I just don't know much about it. As time goes on, I want to learn more about it because I'm realizing now how much all of the politics, whether it be here, Canada, UK, wherever, how it affects this world in general. But that's the one thing Trump and Musk supporters have to understand. They will love you for a while, but when it's expeditious to them, they will pull the rug out from under you. They will hammer you. They will throw you under the bus. Just check the cabinet and the staff he had from 2017 to 2021. Yeah, they were either fired, they quit, they were indicted, they became witnesses. Didn't fare well for the people that were supporting and standing with Donald Trump. All right, the next one says, Hi, Mike. I regularly listen to your show from here in the Atlantic, Canada. You always seem to have some interesting tidbits of information regarding U.S. politics that I don't hear anywhere else. Also, I love listening to Old Soul. She is amazing. In case you're not aware, I thought you might like to hear this speech by Canada's Green Party, Elizabeth May, as she speaks out against Trump and his threats to our country. I love this Green Party leader. She doesn't hold back from saying what's on her mind. Wishing you and yours a happy new year, Cheryl. And I have seen parts of that speech, and she was being kind of sarcastic and saying, "We're not selling Canada or letting you take over." But Canada will take Oregon, Washington, California, and Minnesota, which is interesting because I live in Minnesota. It was pretty sarcastic. It was a great speech. It's on YouTube. If you get a chance to check it out, I would definitely do that. All right, the next one says, Mike, I appreciate your offer to have me on the show. I watched the TED Talks from Nick Hanauer and did some other searching. Seems I'm not the only one thinking about this. I just saw Lawrence O'Donnell talking with someone about economic inequality as well as someone from the Midas Touch. Joe Biden's actions are exactly what we need. It's working because rich people do not create jobs. Working people earning a living wage do. I had not reached back out to you to be on the show. You invited me a while back because I was not working on my own computer. I had my employer's equipment. My fabulous kids gave me my own setup when I retired in August. It's taken me a while to get started, to get comfortable with being retired. So if you'd like to have a discussion about economic inequality and why we need to demand that our representatives in the House and Senate need to protect the actions Joe has taken to help build the middle class, let me know what works for you and we'll chat. I want to do more than rant about the upcoming clown show. I want to help arm our like-minded people with the information they need to demand our representatives in Congress to do with their jobs and protect the American people. We can't demand they protect us unless we understand how to communicate what we need. Thanks again for all you do, Judy Crazy Cat Mom, Portland, Oregon. Oregon. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it. And of course, like everybody else, you're more than welcome on the program. We can talk about economics. We can talk about whatever you like. All you have to do is send the email to where you sent that email. Tell me you want to be on, and we'll work out the details and the timing and such, and you'll be on. We do it all the time. We have a lot of regulars, but we've had some new people as of late. And I gotta be honest. I've been on a streak here. Every time I pull somebody off, the new ones especially, and I don't know what I'm getting, I always do pretty well. That's a uh, that's a commentary on the audience that we have with the Rational Boomer podcast. A lot of smart people, a lot of people with great perception and ideas, and that's what we want to hear. All right. Next up comes from Sam. He says, "Hello, Mike. Hope all is well with you. If Trump pardons the J6 criminals, he must be held responsible. This would be an insult to all law enforcement agencies as well as an entire justice system. I urge all to push their representatives to take immediate action for impeachment. My House representative is MAGA Buddy Carter, so that will be no help. But I have contacted my senators, both Democrats, thanks to Trump supporting their opposition and request they push all party members to hold Trump responsible. Thanks, Sam." I was thinking about that. People keep talking about the 14th Amendment and keeping Donald Trump from being inaugurated. Now, there's still people thinking that might happen. I'm not so sure. I'm a little skeptical about that. But one of the parts of that 14th Amendment is that you can't give comfort to insurrectionists. Now, I would have to believe if you pardon those folks, that would be tantamount to giving comfort to insurrectionists. At that point, while in office, assuming he's in office and he pardons these people, that would mean he's in breach of the 14th Amendment. Then the question is anybody going to do anything about it? Well, if the Republicans want to get rid of him, this would be a good excuse. So we'll see what happens with that. It's hard to say how it's all going to play out, but like I say, things aren't going to go well for Donald Trump. He's not going to have the big wins he thinks he's going to have. He's going to have a lot of people pushing back on him, and there's going to be a lot of embarrassment, which is what he absolutely fucking hates. All right, next up. Mike, on Monday's TikTok Live, the question of comments by Marjorie Taylor Greene and others hinting of something nefarious coming. I believe shortly after taking office, Trump pushed and encouraged by his minion underlings will go full dictator. SCOTUS and the rhinos occupying the Republican side of the House will do nothing to stop him. At least 3 Supreme Court justices will defend any action he takes by yelling immunity. A bully, once on a roll, will continue to push and break guardrails until he gets his head knocked off. Don't fret, all strong men ultimately fail. When this meat sack expires, there'll be no one to successfully lead MAGA. It will too fade into history. For now, it's up to true Americans in the world to weather the storm and ensure his like never reach the pinnacle of power again. Thanks, Paul. And then he has a joke. How many Trump humpers does it take to change a light bulb? None. Trump tells them it's fixed and they stand around the dark applauding and cheering. Yeah, that sounds about right. I will argue with you on some point. You say once he takes office, he will go full dictator. I will say he will try. He will try to go dictator. But I don't think the Republicans are going to allow him to do it. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to be quite as receptive because, as I say, now he's a liability. Now he is a lame duck president. There's really nothing more he can bring to the table. The only thing he can really do at this point is embarrass the Republican Party and put them in a bad situation. If he does some of the things he wants to do, it's going to take the economy, and that's going to make it tougher for Republicans during the midterm. Now, Donald Trump doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't need anybody for votes anymore, so he can go full batshit crazy. But the Republicans are not going to stand for that. It would be political suicide. We are going to have to weather some storms, so you're absolutely right about that. I don't know that they're going to be as bad as we might think they will be, but they'll be bad enough. Certainly things we shouldn't be going through. Had we elected Kamala Harris, we could at least start back on revitalizing and repairing this country. And I think for me, that's the most frustrating thing. Donald Trump may not be able to get a lot done, but nothing will get done at this point unless the Republicans somehow work together with the Democrats to do reasonable shit as opposed to some of the crazy shit that Donald Trump is talking. It's hard to say how this is all going to go. Um, but I will tell you, with the things you've seen as of late, like the two denials by the New York Appellate Court and the Supreme Court, Donald Trump's may have lost the horseshoe in his ass where everything goes his way. It's a big difference since 2017 to 2024. They wanted to start a trend. They wanted a two-term president. They didn't get it. They fought like hell to get him back. But now that they got him there, he's just kind of a waste of air, a waste of skin. The Republicans want to do what they want to do, and it's going to be hard with a wild card like Donald Trump just running around like a toddler with ADD. That's pretty much what he is. So he's going to be a hindrance to the Republicans and what they want to do. And thankfully, that'll probably help stop anything crazy from getting done. The Republicans will push back. Why not? What are they afraid of now? There's nothing Donald Trump can do. If they let him fail, then they all fail. If they push back, he can say, well, I'll primary you, but that really hasn't worked much anyway. Once the Republicans go against Donald Trump, he will be crucified. They won't save him, and he will go down in flames ultimately, because that's in the best interest of the Republican Party right now. So I'm not as worried about what might happen when Donald Trump takes office. I'm not happy about it. I'm not excited about it. But I think when we look to the future and we think about what might happen, I think we tend to make things worse in our heads than they will ultimately be. I was talking to my wife today, and she says, remember when I was nervous about that time? Something happened at work. Remember that? I go, yeah, I kind of do. She goes, what happened? Why was I so nervous? I go, exactly. You get nervous about shit, and half the time it never happens. 90% of the time it never happens. So the point is, why fucking worry? All right. The next email says, hi, Mike. I'm an early 2000s Gen Z individual in college and am planning on attending grad school this next year. My thoughts on the election were that the attention span of this country is awful. I tend to agree. Pretty immature. I agree with your assessment that people are always looking for the fluff and salacious news stories to consume. And this is why I think that Trump was able to win. Yeah, I agree with you. People look at Trump, who lies in short bursts every second, and people today seem to just stick with that. An example I saw was how TikTok is so popular. The reason it is so popular is because you can view stories and videos in short bursts. People view Democrats as the party that give long explanation, which makes people fall off the facts they need to be released. An example is how these movements, like the pro-Palestine movement, basically fizzled out after the election. People lose interest when something else comes up. There may be some factors which may contribute to this. One that is the top of my mind is the Republican effort to dismantle the education system and groom the next generation of far-right followers. Democrats are also complacent in this, as they fail to keep the narrative when they take the high road and move around an issue. This is true with their own political infrastructure. States like Ohio, Florida, Iowa, etc., were all former purple states under the Obama administration, but lacked putting up good candidates, equally distributing resources to give a fighting chance is a real problem. An example was the election of J.D. Vance in Ohio, where Democrats ignored the need of resources that Tim Ryan asked for to beat J.D. Vance. You also have spineless Democrats trying to conform to Republicans when they run for elections. It really pissed me off when you see Tom Suozzi pushing Democrats to act like Republicans to win. They keep trying to follow the Joe Manchin template, which the last three elections have shown doesn't work. Joe Manchin was a closet Republican, period. So was Kirsten Sinema. People like Bob Casey and Kamala Harris should have won easily, but because you have Democrats panicking to act like Republicans, with Bob Casey supporting some Trump policies and Kamala cozying up to Liz Cheney, though both are good in my book and not their decision to do so, cost these individuals their base electorate. The only reason Tom Suozzi won, in my opinion, was not because he acted like a Republican during the special election campaign. He won because people on Long Island saw underhanded nature of Republicans with George Santos. In summary, my stance is that Democrats need to be rid of the old guard Democrats forcing these proven failed methods of getting elected in swing states or district, while also being more staunch in their messaging. It is another problem where they yell out how they want to help the middle class, but it means nothing to the electorate when it's followed by spineless decisions making, even when they have full power in the government. My third thought is how Elon Musk believes that he can waltz into a country and turn the political climate towards the far right overnight. It is my opinion that he has no idea how other governments work in other nations, the same of how he lacks the knowledge of the US government. We saw how in France the public united against the far right to deny the majority in parliament. In the UK, they think that Nick Farage, the town idiot of England, can take over if he gets to be prime minister and dissolve the monarchy. He lacks the knowledge that it would take King Charles to agree, and he can't dismiss Farage from the prime minister's seat. Elon doesn't understand the complex government systems, and he thinks he can throw money at it all. You see MAGA nuts like Candace Owens trotting to Australia and New Zealand to spread the good word of MAGA like a Jehovah's Witness, and we saw how they shot her down almost immediately. These countries have experienced hard times like dictators, heavy inflation, depression, revolution, and wars. You see Democrats freaking out over here, and if you talk to any other country, they would tell us that we've haven't seen anything that matches their experiences. South Korea um, has experienced in military dictatorship, which fueled the public pushback of the martial law that their president tried to enact. In Friday, again, they are no stranger to revolutions. They had to experience four to finally get it right. So, as a Gen Z individual, I know that my generation doesn't know what the world truly is yet. Thank you for what you do, Nathaniel. Well, I think you hit it right on the head. I think you're right about people having short attention spans. So maybe we ought to take note of that as Democrats, something like TikTok or the way we deliver messages. Instead of giving long, drawn out speeches, how about we give them the facts in rapid fire? I mean, that's part of the reason I do TikToks the way I do. Some of them are longer than others, but I sit and watch Midas Touch or some of these other places that have a good message, but it takes too long to get to the meat. People do have attention deficit. You got to hit them hard, hit them quick, and give them a payoff at the end. That's why when I do a TikTok, you never see a part two. If I can't tell you the whole story and give you a payoff in the end, I'm not doing it. I'll save it for the podcast. But that's what you need to do. And you need to hit home with what is important. And it's one thing to say we have a great economy and we want to work for the middle class. Well, the middle class right now is having a tough time. They get out of college deep in debt. They get paid shitty amounts of money, and they can't afford the creature comforts of being a fucking adult, like a house, a car, those sorts of things. Now, it's fine to say we want to help you, and I believe they will help the middle class. But you've got to get these people to believe it. They aren't living any dream at all. I look at millennials and Gen Zs right now, and I have to admit they have a much tougher time than I did when I was their age. And frankly, it wasn't easy then. So if it's harder now, I can understand the frustration. And if you understand what the problem is you should be able to figure out how to address it and how to fix the problem. I'm just not convinced that Democrats are willing to look outside their old ways. They keep pounding their head against the wall, but they never seem to change anything up. Hopefully, November 5th was a wake up call. Hopefully, it was. I agree with you. We need to get rid of the old guard. The old guard has proven to be losers. Plain and simple. They lost in November 5th. They lost the presidency. They lost the House. They lost the Senate. And my theory about doing something is if it doesn't work, well, then maybe you should do something different. And I think that's where the Democrats are at this point. We need to do something different. What that is, I don't know exactly, but I know where the problems are. So let's first decide to address those problems and make people feel comfortable. Give them a reason to vote for Democrats, not just saying Donald Trump's crazy and we'll help you. You got to get specifics. People are struggling right now, and you've got to give them some idea that you can actually fix that situation. And then when you get in office, actually fucking do it. Don't just sit on your laurels and start talking about it again at the next presidential election. All right. Thank you, Nathaniel. All right. Next one is Javier from South Texas. He says, hello, Boomer. Heard your cast yesterday. Very interesting group, I might say. Has had me thinking about all that was said. Do you think Democrats will implode quicker than the tide? Not sure what that means. Something is happening. It's way too silent on both sides. Heaven help us. Javier from South Texas. Yeah, I know what you mean. November 5th came and went. The Democrats got beat, and then it went real quiet. Now, a lot of those folks that think something's going to happen before January 20th say that's why they're quiet. They're planning, they're plotting, they're going to do something. And God damn it, I hope that's true, but I'm just not buying it. I haven't seen that out of the Democrats to date. So I don't feel confident about them doing something. But I will tell you this, if they aren't planning something, if they don't have some way to fight back between now and January 20th, I'm going to look real hard at the Democrats. So you're a bunch of pussy ass bitches. You haven't done anything. You're not willing to fight. And if you're not willing to fight, we need to make some changes because we're in trouble now with the Republican Party. And if you guys can't do it, we got to figure something else out. And I don't even know what the fuck that would be. All right. The next one says, I just read information explaining why Democrats did not enforce the 14th Amendment. I have summarized what I learned. The 14th Amendment was not used for these reasons. The anti-Trumpers would lose the case in court. Reading all sections of the amendment is necessary as it's very detailed and precise. Number one, the amendment does not include president when giving information about who is being eligible to hold office. In fact, records indicate that an earlier version not passed, the word president was stricken. I'd heard that too. I don't know if that would be disqualifying, but I understand your point. Number two, Trump was not indicted for insurrection in Congress as defined in one of the sections of the amendment. None of the January 6th rioters were charged with insurrection. Not true. There were at least two or three of them charged with insurrection. And Donald Trump doesn't have to commit insurrection. He has to give comfort to people who commit insurrection. But there were some convictions involving insurrection amongst the J6ers. Not all of them, but some of the higher ups. Remember that? There were 6 up and they got hit with the insurrection charge. Yeah. The word president was not included in the amendment for impeachment. This all makes me sick, but at least I know the reasons for ignoring the possibility of least publicly. I've just left the Democratic Party because of their weakness. They should have provided this information to the public and other information to fight Republicans like they would have if situations were reversed. Max. Yeah, I have a lot of problems with the Democratic Party. I think leaving the Democratic Party doesn't do any good. They don't care if you leave. And what are you going to do now? Just be wholly independent? That's fine. I'm independent for all all matters of fact. But we're at a point now, and people say, well, why did you go all Democrat? Well, because we got to fight against a fucking dumpster fire that is the Republican Party. And the only way I can do that is to fight with the Democrats. That said, I would still fight with the Democrats, but I will criticize the Democrats because if they aren't doing the things we need them to do to win, we need them to fucking change. All right, the next one says, "Hey, Boomer and Boomer Brigade, Unserious was a great video." That's a title of a video I did. I don't remember what I said on it, but I'm sure it was genius. Changing things to the Gulf of America and then taking over Canada, Mexico, and Greenland. Now, the last subject about Canada, Mexico, and Greenland is rather interesting. My jazz musician mind says we have to look into this. Why did he bring it up? Well, on and off for some years, there's been some discussions and meetings about the creation of the North American Union, a melding of the US, Canada, and Mexico. We know about the US, but it's known of the vast untouched resources of Canada and Mexico. A union of these countries is said would change Western civilization forever by putting huge wealth and economic power in the hands of the NAU. It is clear that we are in decline. We are losing our status and power, and the world now has options. We see the potential in BRICS, and of course, despite the false information, the meteoric rise of China. For example, there's no doubt, despite the idiotic rhetoric on Facebook, the global economy is making a big transition to electric cars and mass transit. We are still restoring steam locomotives. It is a fact that China is going to take over the entire world automobile industry. The cars are highest in quality and the cheapest. A big reason for the terrorists, I have the feeling that this concept, in the face of being dominated by China, is on the table somewhere. Of course, the big boys will never let him near this. Food for thought. Thanks, Z-Man. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with anything you've said. Those are all considerations, and I'd believe in a master plan if Donald Trump was designated as the master. Um, if you're going to try to do some things like this, Donald Trump is not the leader you want because he isn't about substance. He isn't about getting anything done. It's all performative. He says he wants to get Greenland. He says he wants to get Canada and Mexico. Somebody fed that information to him to start the narrative. But the fact of the matter is Mexico and Canada are independent and they're proud independent countries, sovereign nations. You don't just say, hey, join us and we'll be powerful. Even if that were true, they're not going to do that, especially with somebody like Donald Trump making the claims and the threats he's making. They're certainly going to push back. Something came out yesterday, and I haven't read it, so I can't verify it as yet, but there was talk about Donald Trump going into Greenland. Now, first of all, he sent Don Jr. up there, and he went out there, and apparently there were some Trump supporters there, and everybody was excited. And Don Jr. were there uh, with his podcasting buddy, and it seemed like they got a small reception, but there were a lot of people there just flipping them off too. But then something came out in a Danish newspaper that said apparently they got into the country and immediately they started out handing hats to homeless people and those sorts of things. And they had to come to the event, and in exchange, they would get a free meal at a hotel. So they're bribing people, they're paying people to come out and see them. Don Jr. didn't do shit there. And there is no foothold with the Republican, well, with Donald Trump in Greenland. I understand the premise you're saying, but to take any of that seriously, I think is a waste of time. It's not going to they're not going to do it. There's no way, there's no route to do it. I mean, when somebody asked Donald Trump, how are you going to get Greenland to come with you? Well, you got a couple of problems. He said that he's going to win the people over. Donnie's going to win people over. While you're crashing the country you're currently running, you're going to win the people over. And then Denmark is going to say, well, you like Donnie better than us. Go ahead. No, that's not how it's going to go. It's not going to go that way. All right, next one up says, hi, Mike. I've heard many people wondering what they can do amidst this mayhem and foolishness the Trump administration is bringing to the table. I just want to give this suggestion to the other followers of your post and podcast. I'm writing to both my senators and my representative every time Trump or MAGA Republicans spew more garbage, and I'm pointing out that I'm aware of it and my thoughts are about it. As you can imagine, I've reached out many times already, and the drunken toddler hasn't even been sworn in yet. If nothing else, let's be our elected official. Let's our elected officials know that we are all well aware of what is being said and proposed, and watching and listening and choosing not to be ignorant, um, and bury our heads in the sand. It might just give us power we need. As you and many of your contributors have said, they want to get reelected and public opinion can work for us. As always, I truly appreciate you and your guest and everyone in this forum. Michelle from Pennsylvania. Well, you make a good point. And as I've said, we've got to kind of control the narrative. And one of the ways we can do that is by way of writing letters constantly, be in their inbox all the time. He said this is fucked up. I don't agree with it. I think you're right, Michelle. I think we've got to have continuous contact with our representatives so they know exactly where we stand. This is no time to get lazy. You might be against it, but you're too lazy to go in to vote or whatever. They need to know that we are adamant about this shit, and they need to represent us in a proper way. Otherwise, they may not be in that position ultimately. So that's a good point, Michelle, and I appreciate it. All right, the next one says, hey, Boomer, a lot is happening, I know. And something you know as well is that there are a lot of deaf ears out there. After years in the music business, you are aware that nothing can calm, incite, or lend an ear like music and a song. I'd like to introduce you to Martin Kerr. If you haven't already heard of him, many of his songs are political, hit the nail on the head, and carry the stories of injustice. This is one about Luigi Mangione, kind of folksy. I know you're not a promoter anymore, but maybe you could give him a shout out if no other reason except he's on our side. And that people will hear and respond to music and song, and they won't listen to the voice of reason. Look at the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It was a musical revolution, gave politics a voice, and is what is missing from our political environment today. Let the sun shine in. P.S. I know it's out of your norm. I'm not what you do, but hearing their voice can help make you stronger. And then there's a Facebook link, and I'll certainly check that out. And you should check it out. Martin Kerr is his name. I will check it out. I think I've seen him before. And I do agree with you. You know, since there's some parallels to what we were doing in the 60s, I'm wondering where the protest songs are because they had a serious impact. I mean, those protest songs you hear on classic rock radio stations today. Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan, the resurgence of Bob Dylan with the movie, and all the others. There's a lot of great songs that were protest songs. And you're probably right. This is what we need now. We need that to fill a certain section of the narrative. And then it says, thank you, kiss the grand girl, contrary, Mary. Well, thank you, Mary. You make some great points. And I agree with you. And I will check out Martin Kerr. It's spelled Kerr. All right, next one says, hi there. I'm trying to determine who's who and winding up a bit confused. First off, I enjoy your content and have been following you since I ran across your content on Facebook several months ago. Like-minded creators are few and far between for me. Most are full of shit and don't post a lot of relevant content. For me, almost everything you post is exactly how I would have communicated it. So I've been communicating with someone named Mike on Telegram. Is that you? It is not me. It's one of the many imposters. No, I'm not on Telegram. Never will be on Telegram. So just block them. I'm also Suave de Boner or Mr. Suave on Blue Sky on TikTok, your friendly curmudgeon from the fourth corner. I've also have someone calling themselves Rational Boomer or Bomber on TikTok. Is that you too, or is that someone stealing content that I should report? Uh, my handle, because apparently wasn't the first Rational Boomer on Blue Sky, believe it or not. My handle is Rational Boomer 416, 416. That's my birthday. That's why I put it there. Rational Boomer 416. If it doesn't say Rational Boomer 416, ain't me. Block them, report them, do whatever you want. Don't report anybody on TikTok though, because they just come. I get a bunch of shit when they report them, then they think it's me, and it's a hassle. Just block the people on TikTok. Goes on to say, I also really enjoy the podcast and the lives. Thank you so much for all you do. I also wish you would put out the word when you're going to do a live. They are a hoot and fun to watch and comment. Thanks again, your follower Suave. Um, well, I'm going to do a live tonight at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. So that's 10:30 Eastern, and it's 8:30 Pacific Time. So um, I will do one tonight. I will put out a TikTok and a YouTube short that says I'm going to do a live. One of the one of the reasons I haven't done that in the past is because I just kind of shoot from the hip. I say, okay, fuck it, I'll do it now. I'm kind of spur of the moment type of guy. But in addition to that, when I do that, typically it brings in more Trumplafucks, and then it gets fucking crazy. Now, I'm fortunate that I have some moderators, Great Captain, TJ the Plumber, Rebecca, and they do a hell of a job. We've been able to stay on an hour and a half the last three TikToks, lives. So I'll make a comment maybe just before I go on, maybe an hour or two before I go on, and we'll probably get more people coming, and hopefully they won't be Trumplafucks because I'm tired of listening to that bullshit. Um, Hi, Mike. Still loving your podcast. Just letting you know that we're sitting here with our popcorn, waiting for the usual Republican chaos to unfold now that they have to start governing with split loyalties to their MAGA base and rich oligarchs. Australia doesn't have a debt ceiling, but it has been a political issue, as were rich donors until recently. Both of our major parties, Labor and the Coalition, have cooperated on proposed electoral reforms targeting the use of private money, which will hit the funding models of rich business owners and challengers who want to run for office as independents. Our proposed new electoral reform will limit raising public funding to $800,000 on spending per electorate. Regards, Judy. And, I think that's not a bad idea. We should shorten the campaign season, and we should limit the amount of money they can use, and each candidate should have the exact same amount. If we want a fair representation and a fair chance to pick who we think is best, there shouldn't be a thumb on the scale of whoever has the most money. That doesn't suggest they are the best person. So I agree with you, Judy. Thank you very much. All right, the next one says, "Hi, Boomer. Just watched your podcast on YouTube with Ed Jones. Enjoyed it. Thanks for your content. I've been thinking about Joe Biden and Kamala getting blamed for prices increasing, and here are my thoughts about this. First, do people really think COVID wasn't the majority of the reason for the price gouging? Starting with the demand for basic items like toilet paper. During COVID, we would pay any price just to get toilet paper. People forget this. Yeah, they do forget fast. Fast forward to the supply chain crisis, which is directly related. This leads me to my point. My mom was famous for buying cards specific to the year that you were born. I was born in 1964, and I still have that card, which states the price of gas was 30 cents a gallon, bread 21 cents per loaf, milk $1.06 per gallon. My point is, when do prices of average things that we buy weekly, other than if the specific item is on sale, actually go down? They don't. They never do. Conversely, when do our salaries go up? They haven't gone up proportionally to the inflation rate. Um, just wanted to bring this up because it dawned on me the other day and wanted to share with you and your audience. I will sign off. Have a great week. Shelley from Scottsbluff, uh, Nebraska. Thank you, Shelley. And that's really where the inequity is. We keep getting prices going higher and higher. When I started driving in 76, I think I was paying 50 cents a gallon for gas. It's when I started driving. My dad gave me his big old tank of a Ford Squire or Ford Country Squire wagon with a 400 engine in it. It was a fucking boat. But I remember going out for the night with my buddies, pooling together $2, getting 4 gallons, and that was enough to get us through the night. Can't do that anymore. And are people making that much more money? No, they're not. Well, I am, because when I was 16, I was making about $50 a week working in a restaurant. So it's improved since then. But the point is that our incomes don't go up proportionately to the cost of living. And therein lies the problem. And it's largely due because of Republicans not wanting to raise the minimum wage for what, 14 years, something like that. It's fucking ridiculous. And that may be the biggest problem we have in this country is the inequity of wages. And the younger people are getting hit the hardest. Things keep going up, but salaries don't. And eventually it's very difficult. I know my wife's talked about this. She was a teacher in the Minneapolis public schools. She was a teacher for 30 years. And when she first started, we were doing pretty well. But as time went on, she got a couple of a few increases here and there for inflation, cost of living type thing, but that was like 1% or 2%. But toward the end of her tenure as a teacher, finances were tougher, and we couldn't understand that. We knew prices went up, but we should have hung with them with the inflation and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is my wife, as a teacher, believe this or not, she never received any kind of raise in like 20 years. So when the prices continue to go up, but your salary stagnates, well, you got a fucking problem. This is why people can't afford things. So I think if there's something that needs to be addressed in this country, we need to pay people better. We need to pay people a living wage. They shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to fucking survive paycheck to paycheck. Therein lies the problem. And the Democrats better recognize that and address that if they hope to win. All right, this may be the last one. Hello, Boomer and Boomer Brigade. Over 24, I got quite the education, and now at the beginning of 2025, I've come to a big realization. Many of us have unrealistic views, hopes, and optimism for possible bad outcomes for the Trump administration. I, like many, have watched and listened to many podcasters for some sense of hope and comfort. However, a lot of these people are blowing sunshine up your ass. Boomer is not one of them. Thank you. However, the following are Brian Taylor Cohen, the guys on Midas Touch and Legal AF, the Rebel HQ, of course, YTT. These guys may mean well and are probably nice guys, but they're selling pie in the sky. I've been watching these guys a lot. It's always been some new breaking story. Oh boy, Trump is in trouble now. Smith has a new way for his case to be reopened. We got new witnesses. We got this on him. We got that on him, blah, blah, blah. Check the like button, etc. It's bullshit if you haven't noticed. All this stuff they come up with and all this good news never comes to anything. And I mean, never, ever noticed that. Dump them. Stop listening to them and stop going high while they go low. Go lower. Become cynical and toughen up. Get smart. Forget this bullshit on 110 where the Merchan is going to sentence Trump. Yeah, right. You have to start thinking like this is my opinion. Trump is a front for oligarchs, billionaires, and corporations. He is the tool to make their agenda reality. There are literally billions of dollars backing him up and the Republicans. Nothing is going to happen to him or them. All this speculation yesterday about Johnson not making it through the voting and delaying the inauguration was bullshit. Another show. This crap about cracks in MAGA and MAGA civil war, more bullshit. It's It's a show. Get real and get smart. This is a street fight, not a yoga class. The real liberal left in this country has very little grasp on reality and needs to fix their brain and grow a pair. Nobody's coming to rescue, especially some bought and paid for judges. Well, somebody needs to get Z-Man a Xanax. This must have been one of your down days. Well, here's what we do know, Z-Man, and you wrote this some time ago, so I gave you some grace there. But he is going to be sentenced tomorrow. And as I said, as you would probably say, nothing's really going to happen to him. And that's probably true. However, this does fuck with his head. It's another loss he has to deal with. And there is no greater problem for Donald Trump than being a loser, being anointed a loser. Um, you're absolutely right about how these things, a lot of these things don't come to fruition. And we have to look at why that is. And it's largely due to the Democrats and the DOJ. We have an incredibly broken system. I'm not going to be fatalistic about it, but it's a problem. And instead of crying about the problem, let's do something about the problem. And as you said, we need to speak out, push back, and be tough. When they go low, we need to get in the fucking muck with them. We must. Thank you, Z-Man. I appreciate it. All right. Now I actually do have two more. Hi, Boomer. Question for you. Where is Pence? He knows that Trump thinks that his election problem started with him. If anybody knows what Trump is capable of doing, he is it. Love everything about your show. I've been a listener for 2 years and love it. I'm starting to smile again watching how MAGA is finding out they fucked up. No sympathy here. Thank you and your guest. Y'all stay blessed. Jackie from Broke-Ass, Alabama. Well, it's interesting that you brought up Pence because Donald Trump saw Pence, shook hands with Pence for the first time since he wanted him hanged. And that was at the Jimmy Carter funeral. That was an interesting scenario because Donald Trump and Melania walk into the funeral. He walks by, he shakes the hand of Dan Quayle, probably doesn't even know who the fuck he is, shakes hand with Mondale, probably doesn't know him either. But then there's Mike Pence and Donald Trump shaking hands. That was a little fucking awkward. And the other thing to remember too is when they release these reports, especially the one in DC, Mike Pence was questioned, and he will be part of that report. So it's going to be interesting to see what he says, and it's going to be hard for Donald Trump to deny that shit when his own people start talking shit about him. So later on, while they're in this getting ready for this funeral, Obama walks in. Michelle didn't come, but Barack did. He sits down right next to Donald Trump, and they seem to have a congenial conversation, some smiling and stuff. I don't know how Obama can do that, but that's what happened. Then, of course, George W. Bush and his wife Laura came in. George W. Bush just snubbed him, refused to shake his hand. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton didn't even look at him. Same was the case for Kamala Harris and Doug sitting in front of him, and Joe Biden and Jill sitting in front of them too. So Donald Trump was pretty much shut out at that funeral. And he looked like a fucking dupe as the speeches went on. And there were some very compelling speeches. People were nodding and getting emotional. And Donald Trump just stared off into nothingness. He looked like a fucking dolt. He looked like he had no clue where he was. And that's who Donald Trump is. All right, the last one comes from Laura. She says, do you think DJT's rally on 119.25 is a way to amp up his followers to try to cause damage to DC so he can declare martial law? I do agree that it's an optics thing for him, Laura. Well, there's two things I've thought about with 119. It makes no sense, but let's be honest. The only thing Donald Trump is capable of doing is a campaign rally. He can't govern. He has no substance. But the two things that come to mind with that 119 campaign rally is that if what people are saying is true, that there's something going to be brought up at the last minute before the inauguration, Donald Trump will want to rally some troops and have hopes of violence, but that's not going to happen because on the 19th, Joe Biden's still the president, still in charge of the National Guard. They will be put down very quickly if that happens. The other aspect of it I've been thinking, and it's probably more likely if nothing else is going on, is that he's really sensitive about who's going to show up to his inauguration. You remember the first time, biggest one ever, but then the videos came out and saw there was a lot of open land and not that many people showed up. So he's trying to get people out there and riled up so they'll go to the inauguration and he'll prove that he's the most famous, most popular president ever to be inaugurated. And it won't work. It won't work. It'll be interesting to see who shows up on the 19th. Now, when you get a bunch of dumb fucks showing up in one spot, there's probably going to be problems. Maybe not as big as January 6, 2021, but these are dumb fucks. The whole thing is very curious. I don't know exactly why he's doing this 119 thing, other than he doesn't know what else to fucking do. You know, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't expect any major violence, but like I say, when you get a bunch of dumb fucks on moonshine out there, anything can fucking happen. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.